2 minutes after 8, welcome to Point of View. My name is Phemelo Motene, and this is our Monday edition of Point of View. And as you know, it is our road to the elections 2024. So today we have ANC NEC member Ronald Lamola, who, as you know, is also the Minister of Justice in the country. Let's welcome the Minister in studio. Thank you so much for being here. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you very much, and good evening to the listeners.
Thank you for making time for us. Tomorrow, as you know, we are going to be watching the Deputy Chief Justice, Maya, for her another interview. I think it's all procedural. But when you look at Chief Justice Zondo's term, how do you reflect on that?
Yeah, no, thank you. Indeed, it is a moment of reflection. It is, he will be completing his term in August. And I think he has played his role to protect the independence of the judiciary, to be a leader amongst equal in terms of constitutional law and jurisprudence. And he has held the fort up until now. I believe that he has served the country very well. And we will wish him all the best in his retirement, and also all the best to the nominee for the Chief Justice with the interviews tomorrow. And it has been a huge transformation in the judiciary in the past 30 years, having moved from about 170 white males to a very transformed judicial composition in the country as we speak, almost also close to almost 50% female representation. And for the first time, it will also be led through this nomination by a female Chief Justice. So there's been a huge transformation, which I hope that it will also reflect in the judgments so that the people feel and live the Constitution as we move forward.
I want to touch very quickly on this. We won't stay on it very long, but South Africa returned to the ICJ a couple of days ago, requesting that the ICJ again really do what it can to cease fire, to force the Israel government to stop with what it's doing. As we know, we want it to be declared a genocide there. And I wonder, if the ICJ does not rule in our favor with these emergency requests as well, measures as well, what other legal recourse do we have? Are we considering any other legal recourse in the meantime?
Now, firstly, is that we returned to ensure that indeed the rule of law does reign supreme, particularly on issues of humanitarian intervention, for a clear ceasefire and unambiguous by the court, and also for the State of Israel to report on a timeless basis on what it's doing to allow for humanitarian access and intervention, but also to cease fire, particularly in Rafah. I believe that we have presented a very plausible case, and definitely the ICJ will look into our matter very favorable, because we have presented forensically put evidence with the conjured argument backed by international law. So I'm confident that we have done our duty in terms of the obligations. Indeed, I'm also excited and happy that you will have seen that today the prosecutor of the ICC has announced that he is proceeding with charges against the leaders of Hamas in relations to the atrocities of the 7th of October, which we have condemned as the South African government, but also he's also proceeding with the charges or an warrant of arrest against the highest echelons of the Israel government, from the Prime Minister, Mr. Netanyahu, and the Minister of Defense. And so I do believe that the tide is turning. There is no place to hide for the State of Israel to continue with this siege. And even international opinion across the globe, the collective conscience of the people of the world is turning. So I believe that the children and the women of Gaza will finally be relieved from this siege.
The warrant of arrest may just be that, a warrant of arrest. We don't know, when and if it will be effected. But as you are rightfully saying, there's a lot of movement even inside Israel, where you are now seeing a lot of internally move for him to step down, Netanyahu to step down. In fact, his own ministers are saying, look, tell us what the plan is post this war. Otherwise, you've got to step down. The public already out in numbers. Your reaction to that?
Indeed, he has reached a cul-de-sac, and it's just that a person who is against the wall can also be very dangerous, because may want to die with everyone. But it's what we had said from the beginning, that our intention to go to the court was to first get a court order which will be authoritative, factual, and persuade the world, because the world was only living through the propaganda of the state of Israel. We have lifted that veil of propaganda through the law, through evidence, forensically presented, and we're able to show the whole world that this is what is happening in Gaza. And I believe that that is turning. And as you have said, that the warrant may just be, I do not think it will just be a warrant on paper. It will at some point be enabled to be executed, because he will have nowhere to hide. And also with all the institutions, multilateral institutions of the globe coming together and the world players, there will be no place to hide. It will definitely be implemented.
So, of course, South Africa has put all its efforts around this particular conflict. There are other conflicts in the continent. DRC has got problems. We are not hearing enough about our reaction to what is happening. Yes, we are here and there, and the media also to be blamed as well. It's not just the South African government. Your sense of why we focus so much on other conflicts and not on others?
I'm happy that you are also acknowledging your role,
Yes.
because as a South African government, you will remember we've deployed about 3,000 soldiers recently by the president. We are there. We are participating in the peacekeeping mission in the DRC. We are participating in the peacekeeping mission in Mozambique, as you are aware. We have just been left there today alone. We participate in South Sudan. In all conflicts in the continent, we have got soldiers on the ground. That is participation, that is implementation. And from time to time, we update the nation. And I remember that the president was heavily criticized for deploying the soldiers to the DRC. Yes. But there is a clear agenda for peace, to silence the gun, and that is what the South African government stands for. So it's a job we're continuously doing on a day-to-day basis. And as and when there's a need to update the nation, there are updates that comes from the South African National Defence Force, from DERCO, which we can, as government, be able to do to that extent. As to how the media reports, we can't really be held responsible. The fact that the narrative is more on reporting on Gaza and what we're doing in Gaza.
No, but surely.
I mean, really, we communicate on as and when there is a need, but we have got soldiers on the ground.
Yes, and you are right. I mean, it's society's response to a particular area and a particular conflict. But you would also admit South Africa has really done very well with this conflict in Gaza, and its prominence and everything we've thrown at it is quite significant. Maybe more than what we've seen in other places.
Not more than we've seen in other places. Even in terms of resources, the resources we're putting in the DRC are far ahead of what we're doing in Gaza. The resources we're putting in Mozambique, by far. But I think there is just a choice to report on Gaza by the media from time to time. And it's your imperative that we really can't do much. But as I've said, if you go to the website of the Defense Force of DERCO, you will see the statements of update of a number of events in that environment.
Very recently, magistrates were threatening to go on strike. Now, we also know that it's not your department's responsibility for some of the issues they're complaining about, salaries. You don't pay those salaries. But I wonder, to what extent do we have to revisit all the stakeholders, Parliament, your department, because you do administer the courts, in how we, number one, resource those courts better, administer them better, make their conditions better, and also making sure that they do get remunerated better.
Yeah, indeed. It is the duty of the Commission on Remunerations of Public Office Bearers. And the magistrate are aware that this is a matter on the table that is being considered by the Commission, which it is processing, including their conditions, not just issues of salary and so forth. It's issue they are dealing with. And we are also ourselves have been consulted. We've made our inputs. I'm also aware that the National Treasury has also made its own inputs, which will assist the process. With regards to the magistrates' courts across the country, indeed, We are doing our best to resource them in terms of technology with challenges of court recording machines across the country, which has since been reduced. There is work with regards to also the courts infrastructure. We have opened a number of courts in the current financial year, Pouchepston Magistrate Court, Polokwane Magistrate Court, and there's a lot of courts that we are revamping. We do have challenges with regards to maintenance. There has now been an agreement with Public Works that we are now devolving some of the powers that at the regional level and at the court level, managers must be able to handle basic maintenance, and we are recapacitating the department to have capability of doing some of the basic maintenance. So there is work, and I believe that the tide is turning.
And that budget will be sitting where? As you said, you want to now restructure it somewhat.
It was with Public Works.
Yes.
It's now back with us.
Okay.
We have now devolved it or decentralized it to the
courts
court
themselves.
Managers. For example, at the level of 1 million rand, they can handle it themselves. In better words, and we have said, to just fix a door, you don't need a tender. We need to recapacitate ourselves just to have a handyman in the court. When there is a small problem of a toilet, they can quickly fix. So that is what we are now capacitating the department on, to be able to take over this responsibility that Public Works has now brought it back to us to be able to handle.
We've been hearing updates from the NPA. Fair enough, they've given us updates on the Gupta extradition case. What do we understand? What's the problem with this extradition case? It has the UAE explained to us properly what's their problem with our submission for this extradition.
Yes, and I'm glad that we now as a country have a number of extradition matters, which exposes the people of South Africa of how extradition works. I mean, when you look at the AKA one, just at face value, it looks like a simple issue, but you can see it's being postponed. There's this and that, and so forth. Unfortunately, extradition it's a legally polycentric driven process, where in the UAE we have submitted, we have made all our efforts. And I have recently met the Minister of Justice when I accompanied the Deputy President, who has again committed that they will respond to the technical questions that we have asked the UAE. And those technical questions relate to what led to the failure of the previous request, which in our view has complied with, it has ticked up all the boxes of the extradition agreement between South Africa and the UAE. And they are saying they will finally respond. We hope they will, because it will be futile for us to resubmit when we don't know exactly what was the issue, because they will reject it on the same basis. So that's why we want those to be responded to. And that is what the NPA also expect. And there is now that commitment that they will engage with the central authority, which is the Director General of Justice, and also there will be engagements of prosecutors to prosecutors. I hope that will happen, but all our efforts in the past have ended with the commitment. So I will be happy when I see the action happening.
Maybe not time for diplomacy to kick in here?
It is. I mean, if
maybe a higher level.
If I say I have spoken to the Minister of Justice, I have also impressed to the higher levels that this is a matter that must be engaged at that level. So the diplomacy is already having kicked in, and it is for that reason that I also had to accompany the Deputy President. It's also efforts to say this is not just, as I've said, not just. We have impressed to them that this is a matter of national interest to the people of South Africa. It's not just a legal issue.
Clearly, we can all see, in as much as we've seen your efforts, we've seen the NPA's effort, we can see that. Clearly, you can see there is a sense of a snail's pace to their response to many times that you've asked them to clarify issues, translations, all sorts of things that we've heard of, these technical issues. Hence, I ask, should we not really take this to another level? And I ask the question because that level of response must raise eyebrows. And what do you think there is that kind of response from them.
Yes, you are correct. And that's why I say, indeed, we have, I have also raised it with the relevant higher authorities that this matter does need political engagement at that level. But obviously, I'm not at liberty to divulge those kind of discussions, but I do believe that there is also that necessary pressure from the higher authorities in our country.
Thanks so much for staying with us. It's 20 minutes after 8 o'clock. We continue our conversation with Minister Ronald Lamola. And as I said, I'm very happy to take your calls on 086 00959. Sunny Boy is calling us from Benoni. Sunny Boy, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Pamela, and your guest, Minister. I just want to touch two things. I know what makes me to make this call is what you just said regarding the tenders. You know, it's talking about the magistrate court buildings whereby they are. You know what he just said? I so wish some of the other ministers in the departments they can, because you can utilize the prisoners that are sitting in prison. Let's take for an example, the Boksburg Magistrate Court. You've got some problems there with the doors and the toilets. Then you go to Boksburg Prison. You've got prisoners that are there. I think maybe they are learning something there to be plumbers. Then you take them, you go and use them to fix the doors at the magistrate courts and the toilets. And then you send them back to prison. You've saved us, as the taxpayers, a lot of money done taking the job that's supposed to be done there and advertise it so that it can get a tender. And then from that 1 million he's talking about, it's going to end up being maybe a 12 million. So I applaud him and I said, you know what, if they are so focused, but now they are so focused late, you know, these things that he's saying now, I think maybe they should have sit in their post porade discussing things like this. Pamela, I can tell you, our country is beautiful and there is no country like South Africa. So if we get people like him who are still appreciating their country, where they are coming from, I say, Mr. Lamola, to me, from Masugu, the bigger brother. Don't stop there.
Minister, were you able to catch briefly what Sunny Boy was saying?
Yeah, no, I agree with Sunny Boy. If he can Google, he will see that we have recently revamped the Leidenberg Second Court of the High Court, the Middelburg or Magistrate Court, using offender labor. So we're already doing it in some parts of the country. It's just that it needs proper monitoring with offenders and so forth. You can't just do it massify. So it's already there is already a process. Offenders, as we speak, even if you can check on his Google, you will see in some parts of the country they've built pharmacies in George, in the Western Cape, in Oudtshoorn. They have built also classes for themselves where they are attending. So the minor jobs that we're able to put them through to work, to learn the skills, we are doing it, but we do need more resources and so forth. Boksburg is one of the best in terms of steel making, plumbing, and so forth. And we're utilizing those inmates to also do some kind of public works infrastructure programs in school, school sports field, because that helps us also sports against crime. And we've done it in Alex, and we want to expand it in some parts of the country so that there is that interaction between them and the community also see them working. But also the community must also not see them as taking away their jobs. So there must be that integration also with the community, the skills being transferred and so forth. So indeed, I agree with him.
Well, having reached almost 40% of overcrowding in the prisons, it does make it difficult when we are, as you're saying, we are trying to rehabilitate. This is a correctional services. That's the plan. That's the idea. But we do have issues with overcrowding, which in a way hampers that effort. And we need to talk about that, because if you have at least, I'm told, a third of those sitting in those prisons are just really minor offenses, some people who can't afford 1,000 rand bail and so on. We need to try and think about how we're going to lessen that burden so that we can actually realize fully the element of rehabilitation in these prisons.
Yeah, indeed, there is no debate about the impact of overcrowding on rehabilitation. And I always say the only way we can reduce overcrowding is that we need to focus as a country on the economy growing, which I hope will now happen with the us turning around ESCOM, with factories working, people being employed. Because when you look at the high number that leads to the overcrowding, it's what we call remand detainees. The majority of the awaiting trial prisoners, because the system takes time. And it's a very migrant number. Indeed, there are those that have bails, but they can't afford. But it's a very small, minute number. It does not really impact the huge number of overcrowding. But the huge number is the remand detainees. Those that have got higher bail, there is a section in the Criminal Procedure Act which they can't afford, which allows a person who runs a prison to apply, to go to court to apply, to enable to reduce that amount where you can afford or to zero. So there are schemes and systems that we are using to enable them for that type of a bail arrangement. But at the end, there is no country in the world except where the economy is very functioning, there is unequal like us and so forth, where you have got no issue of overcrowding. Brazil, US, across the globe. So we need, as a nation, to deal with the crime situation as a country. We need to see rehabilitation and reintegration as a societal process. We can do it ourselves in our facilities, which we are doing our best. But as I say, the huge numbers, we need to have the entirety of government and society working together to reduce overcrowding. It will not only be left to correctional services.
And of course, as you said, I mean, it's everybody's problem, because we don't want them to come in the first place, but we also want criminals to go into jail. So it's an unending cycle.
Yeah.
Obviously, you are appealing to all of us to reconsider how we don't get people into prison. Your thoughts, just briefly, on how we can, all of us, add value in that. You spoke about the economy, but any other ideas on how we can deal with that?
Firstly is that we need to have a family structure. The biggest challenge, as you are aware, majority of kids grow up without fathers and so forth. We need a proper family structure. Hence, we are now working with social development, and also it must be a whole social fabric issue to deal with that, firstly. Secondly is the economy. It needs to work, it needs to function. We need to have people working. We need to grow the economy. And I'm hopeful that with this load shedding, we will now be able to deal with the issues of industrialization, factories, and so forth. Thirdly, for those that have been in our facilities, the stigma that once you get out, it's difficult to find a job. There is no law that denies someone who has been in prison not to find a job. The issue is that those that might have been in certain categories like sexual offenses, courts, and so forth, yes, they may be on the National Register for Sexual Offenders. They may not be appointed. But there are those that they should get a second chance and an opportunity and so forth. So if we could help with that, and I have seen in many other societies, these people have contributed positively. But there are those that do commit heinous crimes when they come out, which is what we are addressing through this program of rehabilitation. Hence, we have now added that even those that are in prison for a very short time, even remand detainees, there must be programs targeted at them, because our research indicates that the ones that have been there for a long time, they don't re-offend.
There is a perception, this is not necessarily reality, a perception that you have to deal with of access to justice, and also justice and fairness to people who experience inequality in a country like ours in real terms, and that the law is always slower when it comes to those with access to money and access to justice that they can afford, and particularly capital. And those who are quite, well off, who the system is rather slow and oftentimes actually is incapable of incarcerating. Your response to that?
Yes, I do think it's not just a perception, it's a reality. We have got a report from the South African Law Reform Commission about access, that the poor are unable to afford the legal system because of the high cost of paying lawyers expensive litigation, and that obviously it did not go to this aspect. There is an aspect that those that have got money, they are able to litigate to the paralysis of the system, and impacting it. But there are also complaints that I just received when we were opening the Polokwane High Court, that particularly men who have got money, they are also frustrating the maintenance process. When women wants to get their maintenance, they try it until they give up, because either the man is it just frustrate the process, does not come. But when the victim one day does not come, the matter is dismissed from the maintenance role. So indeed, there is some work and research as to how do we then ensure that while we are in a constitutional democracy, everyone have got rights, we enable the system to be expedited and it does not get abused by those who have got resources.
Well, beyond that is the question of capacity in the NPA. And capacity, you've heard the criticism that there are cases that you just cannot prosecute. They're too complicated. You look for skills from outside because they're called accounting irregularities, and you can't quite get your head around how these people were able to manipulate systems. Do we have a capacity problem with some of these very technical cases, which I would call fraud cases?
Yes, we do. And when you look at the stats, in the past, you will realize that for almost 10, 15 years, the NPA could not appoint because of budget reduction, but also as a project to capture the state, to incapacitate the NPA. It started to appoint from 2009 because of the intervention of the current president and the Minister of Finance to help them, including the police. There was a reduction, but we are gradually rebuilding. Even the NPA, when you look at the ID, we had to rebuild it from scratch. If there was the DSO, I doubt we'll have had state capture. But the NPA does come to us from time to time in terms of Section 38 of the NPA Act to get senior counsels when they've got complex matters that they are either investigating, that they have to put on the roll. And the list is endless. There is a lot of matters, almost many matters, or the matters state capture. There is senior counsels in each and every matter that they have appointed who are helping them to guide, to also take the matters through courts, including the stand-off matter, for example. As you are correct, it's a complex matter that they are looking into with massive jurisdictions. So they also have a capability that has been assigned in terms of that Section 38, and also in terms of forensic firms that have to come in and help them. And we are continuing to help them to also appoint, so that these people that they work with, they then transfer the skills. They can be able on their own in future to handle these matters. But I believe that even if they build the capacity, there will be certain situations or matters where they will still need to get external help.
So how do we deal with that? Obviously, it's a technical know-how and capacity from resources point of view. How do we deal with that?
Yeah, we're dealing with it now, as I said, with the Section 38 of the NPA Act, where we help them to appoint senior counsels who work with internal staff, where they transfer the skills. Some of the internal staff are able to go to court through the guidance and still handle the matters. And I believe that with time, they can handle them on their own, and even in future, they will be seniors themselves. But the reality is that you will not end up having a situation where you will never need at some point the external help. That is the point I'm just raising.
Yeah, what I was trying to say is exactly that. We obviously want to shrink that need from getting people externally to bring them in, because it's expensive.
Yes.
And that's not sustainable.
Yes,
obviously.
So we're shrinking it by appointing internally.
Yeah.
The people that are going to work with these external people that we have, and with time they will be able to run. Will
we be able to keep up with the cost and the demand of those who you do upskill, and obviously then the private sector will come and yank them outside as well.
Yeah,
and that's an issue, is it not?
Yeah, it's not an easy balance to strike, but we do our best. From time to time they will, particularly the banks, they take a lot from these skills in the NPA.
Corruption within the prisons, we've seen it, and of course the Bester case being one very prominent case, where you see that there are major syndicates. It's not just one isolated person. You see quite an organized crime type syndicates operating in prisons. It's going to take a long time to overhaul that, will it not?
Yeah. We the best way to deal with it is to reduce the human factor. And that's why we're embarking on a massive technological program with regards to scanners, with regards to various platforms, which will not only depend on the human eye. That is the only way. Best case scenario across the globe, we've just recently benchmarked with Brazil. The best solution is technology because people are able to get in with all these contrabands to communicate with the outside world and so forth, because they are able to either get someone to help them to get through with a cell phone, with either is a laptop or iPad, which is illegal. But when there is technology, it's not as easy as it is with the human factor.
Well, you still will need people because, as you saw with this case as well, there was also interception even when there is technology. And of course, people speak of correctional services personnel always being the weakest link because they are able to solicit money, bribes from every corner. That you're going to have to reimagine, because those are still human beings who you will still rely on at some level or another.
Yeah, but then when you do your investigations, like with the Bester one, you will then discover that there were procedural flaws, and then that human factor must explain why was the camera off when it was supposed to be on? Why couldn't you pick this person when the camera is this? Then you realize the camera was shifted because there was a human factor. Therefore, that person who shifted the camera must explain. And that is why there is now a court case. They are undergoing that process. So there will be processes. If there is an interference of a human factor with the technology, they will have to explain, and investigations will reveal.
Except the systems weren't themselves exposing us to what was happening. It was external factors that exposed us to what's happening. The case happens because externally people blew the whistle on the case, not because the systems were tight enough to blow the whistle on what was happening.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Then when you investigate, you then see where are the loopholes and resolve those loopholes. You are able to close, and you are able to then re-engineer your system to cover and ensure that you prevent such in future.
Can we take a call? I've got Wendy Isaacs, who's calling from Killarney, on the line. Wendy, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Pamela. Good evening, Honourable Minister. Wendy Isaacs.
Good evening.
If I may jump in, Pamela, you have a question.
No, go ahead.
I'm really glad you have the Minister in studio today, because what certainly needs clarification and a very strong statement is this issue about, well, South Africa is so busy with the Gaza and Palestine context. What about other issues on the continent? And I appreciate what the Minister said, that, and for me it speaks to literally this whataboutism that happens routinely in the South African public. What about the DRC? What about Sudan? What about other contexts? And the reality is that there are different fora for different humanitarian and peace and security crises. I think the public, and this is where the responsibility lies, in my view, the public needs to be informed by the media, by KSM and others, about interventions that the South African government has taken in different places. There's very little reporting on interventions at the African Union level. There's very little conversation or public information shared around reforms of the Security Council that South Africa has been involved in for many, many years. And I think that to pitch this idea of, well, you pay so much attention to the Palestinian context and ignoring others means that some human rights are more important than others. That's not the case. The fundamental point is that for the genocide in Gaza, there is a forum, there is the International Court of Justice. For issues in the DRC, as the Minister has pointed out, there are peacekeeping operations, and then there's a lot of work that happens at the AU level, and that needs to be discussed in media so that people are informed. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Do you have any other question? I suppose that was a comment. Wendy?
For the Minister, I don't have particular questions except to, you know what, I actually do have a specific question, Minister, if you can help us as members of the public who pay some attention to developments at the Security Council. What is your view on the Council's position following whatever decision that the ICJ makes or the ICC makes in terms of the warrant of arrest? That may or may not be issued. We'd appreciate your thoughts on those 2 points. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks very much for that.
Yeah, no, thank you very much and for that comment. Yes, I agree that indeed it does need the collective conscience of the South African public to also scrutinize what we are doing in the DRC, in Mozambique, because those I can attest. You can find statements in the Department of Defense on the progress in Mozambique, what is the situation in DRC. With regards to what becomes the role of the Security Council, and that's why we really want that the ICJ must come out with a clear ceasefire. So that we can then take it back to the Security Council and be able to say this is now a court outcome. These temporary ceasefires have not been working. Can now the Security Council, empowered by this ICJ ruling on a ceasefire, strengthen it and make it a decision of the Security Council?
Yeah, and as you know, those are quite complex because Security Council is the US, I suppose. And you know what's happening there.
Yeah, but and that's why I say from the onset, the US, you'll have seen, they were very vigorous, they were attacking us and all that. But with evidence coming out, gradually they are seeing reality, and the public also in the US. So if there is an authoritative decision of the ICJ, it's not as easy as just a resolution that comes through.
Thank you so much for staying with us. Minister Ronald Lamola is with us in studio. And I suppose you're also counting down. You are about to wrap as a Minister of Justice. Yesterday, news came in that the President of Iran, President Ibrahim Raisi, passed away. And you're a man that we believe is a man of justice. How do you react to his passing? I asked the question because we saw sort of misreaction. Of course, we were given information, state information, and then there was a lot happening on social media. Women all across the world who are Iranian, who were ululating, who were, very happy that this may be a moment that they may find freedom, so to speak. Just your reaction on his passing.
Yeah, no, the president is conveyed the message of condolences to the Iranian government for the loss of their leader and also the people he was with, including the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So it is a somber moment for the people of the world. And obviously, the death of anyone evoke emotions, particularly if it's a leader. There will be debates and discussions. We will, for now, only as a South African government express the condolences.
It's very good that I know that the president said that. And I'm asking this question because, as I said, you're a man who studied law, you're a man who believes in justice. And even if we park Iran here for a minute, what we've seen in the continent where you are now feeling that the rights of the people who are either, LGBTQ plus community are being yanked away from us right before our eyes, that continues to happen. And of course we have diplomatic relationships with these countries. How do you react to how maybe we may be regressing rather than progressing in terms of human rights in many of these quarters?
Yeah, I can only speak what is the policy of South African government. in that, as you will remember, when we were chairing the AU and also at the AU platforms, our president was a lead voice on the empowerment of women, on the protection also of the LGBTQI communities in the African continent, and not only ending there, also speaking for also people with albinism across the continent. So it is our voice. We also speak for the people of Western Sahara. We stand and speak for human rights in the African continent, for the entrenchment of the Human Rights African Charter, and for the protection of the most vulnerable group. That is the position of the South African government, that our constitutional values, we also want to see what is in the Bill of Rights, the values, also playing a role in our policy positions at the AU level. Hence, we continue to advocate for human rights across in the African continent through the African Union and also through our participation in SADC.
As I said, you're probably wrapping up now in your role because you don't know what's going to be your fate afterwards. What has kept you up in this time, in this role?
Yeah, no, I know my fate. The ANC will get a decisive victory. The ANC will... we have done our best in the past 8 years. There has been successes and there's been failures. And we have learned from the strength of those failures. And I believe that will come out very strong after. What has kept me awake was the sense that South Africans are feeling that crime is taking over society, a sense of helplessness. It's what has kept me awake to say, how do we balance a constitutional democracy with the rights of South Africans to feel free and safe in their own homes? That's why we have embarked on a project to review the Criminal Procedure Act so that we are able to respond and enable law enforcement agencies to stamp their authority in terms of the entirety of the criminal justice system. So that is a project that we have embarked upon, which we will, as we come back, unleash the new reviewed Criminal Procedure Amendment Bill that I believe will completely overhaul the criminal justice system and rebuild the trust and faith of the South African society.
From a security point of view, are you concerned about these elections?
Obviously, when there are elections, there are all types of things happening. You must always be vigilant, be alert. We are concerned about the inflammatory language that is coming out. Obviously, in particular, the MK party claiming that they will get a 2/3 majority when they know it's not possible, it will never happen. We believe such is a fermentation of some sort of instability going beyond the elections. But the security forces are on high alert. South Africans are on high alert. They are vigilant. And I also believe that the IEC will run free and credible elections, and we will be able to go through this process. And also, hopefully, political parties, as they engage in the elections debate, they will do so, criticize us, which is a fair process, in a non-inflammatory manner, which does not incite violence.
What did we learn from the July unrest?
That we need to respond quickly. We need to condemn any form of violence that comes from any quarter through social media platforms or through political party speeches or any platform. So we need to be proactive in dealing with that. And I do believe that the period of these elections need that proactiveness. And I'm happy that the president, as this kind of language was starting, he condemned it and continuously said, let's use our democratic institutions. If people have got views and so forth, it's fine. They can criticize the government. But criticizing does not mean you must be inflammatory, you must incite violence. It must be a fair criticism. Let's engage robustly. Let superior logic reign supreme.
You said, obviously, you've, and the ANC says this a lot, you've been reviewing, even as government, you've had some successes and some failures. A failure that bothers you the most?
I think is the face of the unemployed youth of our country. As you go through door to door, seeing their faces being hopeless, that is what bothers me the most, that we need to have the economy working. And I'm happy that Eskom has reached this level of 70% availability factor, that they are winning the battle against load shedding. That means that they will now enable us to have factories be put back to work, the economy functioning, and also the extractive industry, which is one of the biggest consumers of energy, also coming back to full life. And this will help us to then have the industries working. This is the part which we need to find right. Young people back at work, going back to put food on the table. That is what I feel that we need to put that as a main issue for the work. And I'm happy that is also priority number one in the ANC manifesto.
How are you going to, government enables that environment, but government cannot employ those young people. It just can't. How are you going to make sure that the private sector does onboard these young people? We know the private sector has money, capital that they're not spending. How are you going to make sure that it does?
I think we have already started the journey. When you look at this issue of load shedding, it has succeeded because the president enabled through the reforms in the energy sector private individuals, factories and people to be able to generate a certain amount of power. The turnaround at the Transnet has also been government and the private sector putting hands together, including resources. And the president's continuous investment initiatives and drives that has exceeded the 1 trillion investment pledges. I believe with that we will be able to turn around the situation, particularly if as it is showing, all signs showing that Eskom is turning the corner, Transnet is turning the corner, the economy will be back to function, there will be investment, and therefore we will be able to create jobs.
As that is happening, industry is also leaving. We've seen that recently.
Yeah, no, industry leaving, and as you will have seen from the statement of DTI, does happen from time to time based on their own strategic decisions at international level, where they may want to go and invest some. We have seen many banks coming in and out of South Africa. We have seen many companies coming in and out. But as they leave, there are others that are coming in. The key is that you need to have a particular level of foreign direct investment, which is what the president is driving, which will enable us to have the enough or to have a particular level of foreign direct investment, which will enable us for the economy to grow and also to create jobs.
You are one of those ministers that understand fully the plight of the young people when they fought for free if fees must fall. We are sitting here now with fantastic policies, but we are really struggling with implementing them. Students continue to complain about monies that are not coming through, and as fast that's not properly managed. Your response to how we are, on one level, bringing in policies that speak to the problems that we have, and on the other, we just struggle to implement. And when we eventually react, it takes a very long time, and young people are disgruntled.
Yeah, indeed, I think implementation is one of our biggest challenges, which we will have to deal with in the 7th administration. And I'm happy that I saw the Minister of Higher Education intervening in NFSAS with the dissolution of the board and the interim appointment. I hope that he's going to get the capable skills, fit for purpose, that will implement this policy, because the amount of money we are investing in NFSAS, it should reach each and every student. We should not have these problems. So we need to get people who are capable to run the institution, who will do what they are supposed to do in terms of the policy, the money reaching the students in real time at the appropriate moment. And there is no reason for us not to be able to do that with our most complex and sophisticated financial capability as a country in the financial sector, in government, we do a lot of direct payments. So this is an experience and a skill that we'll definitely be having. We just need to find it and deploy it correctly.
So is our problem, you said obviously, is implementation, and we don't have to stick with NSFAS. In general, implementation is a problem.
Yes.
Is our problem capability or corruption?
It's both. Because firstly, when you speak about implementation, you need to have someone who's capable to implement. Secondly, that person must be of integrity. So you can have someone who's capable but is corrupt. So that's why I'm saying we need to get people who are fit for purpose, both capable and also people of integrity who will also put the country first. And I think SARS became a very good example where an institution has been turned around. Mr. Kisweda came in, and you can see the results are tangible, are open, the revenue is growing, the country is able to show. And I think ESCOM also, in this short period, the board that it has been there, and with the new CEO, there is a glimmer of light and hope